Willie D Live.
It's Willie D, y'all. Back with another episode of information and instructions to help you navigate through this wild, crazy, beautiful world. In the studio, George Daniels. Ladies and gentlemen, y'all don't even understand how important this man right here is. This man did not just simply own the most popular and successful record stores of all time in Chicago, Illinois. The man didn't just help break artists. He helped make artists. Y'all don't understand. Man, thanks for coming on the show,
Yes,
man.
I'm honored to be here with you, Willie.
Man, let's get right into it. And I think this is a good segue. 50 years of hip-hop and no representation whatsoever of George Daniels or any of the people who work behind the scenes to make hip-hop what it is today.
I tell you, it's so disappointing me. I've gone to some of the functions they've been doing, celebrating the 50 years, and it's almost like you feel disrespected because they're giving so much credit to an arena that had nothing to do with it. Because at the beginning of rap, which turned into hip-hop, all the labels were independent because the majors didn't know what it was.
Right.
I had black executives telling me, George, don't worry about that rap shit. It ain't gonna last.
Yeah.
But we steady selling it like mad because I was in contact, and those labels contacted me along with other independent stores because that's the only way you move product. And then the DJs that had the mixtapes, that was your marketing.
Yeah.
And then we would be selling the mixtapes. And that was the intro into the marketplace. And so those majors and what have never been bought it had they not seen the numbers, the sales.
Right.
And the sales were coming through us. That's what made them interested in the business. Because in understanding the business, the black side and the pop side, you had black radio promotion guys and so on. So they hit the black radios and so on and so forth. They come to the black stores. And if a record crossed over to the pop side, then the white record promotion people would take it over. Black guys didn't take it to the white stations. Mm-hmm. And see, so they totally depended upon us to put the legs, if you will, on the music that was out here.
Yeah.
And I kind of had such a huge background. I had some of the greatest mentors in the business because Chicago was like the mecca of the music industry. For example, Beyonce, when they did Cadillac Records, that was a depiction of a record label in Chicago, which was Chess Records. Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, mm-hmm. John Lee Hooker, the Dells, Etta James, who Beyonce portrayed. And I was 18 years old, and I was Etta James' driver in Chicago.
Get out of here, man.
Yes, sir.
You drove for Etta James?
Yes, I did.
God, man, the stories you have just off of just...
And I was just a kid because
wow.
I wound up there. I graduated high school in 1964, and I was hanging out. I was going to Loop Junior College, which is now Harold Washington College in Chicago, and I was working at Montgomery Ward, the mail order house, which would be like Amazon today. And I met this girl hanging out that fall. We started liking each other. She had one more year at Hyde Park High School. And she had a part-time job at Chess Records where she was a receptionist and she sang background. That was Minnie Riperton. That's how I wound up in the business because of her.
Were you dating?
Yes. We were teenagers.
Minnie Riperton?
Took her to a prom and the whole thing. But we were teenagers.
What?
Yeah. They would, look, working there, it was such an experience. And, I got a chance to meet, in Chicago, there's a street, and for all your viewers and listeners, in Chicago on Michigan Avenue from Roosevelt Road, which is 12th Street, to Cermak, which is 22nd Street. Those 10 blocks historically is known as Record Row. The biggest black record labels in the country came off of that street back in the day. I mean, Cadillac Records, Chess Records. The largest black record label before Motown was VJ Records, Vivian and James. Your last guess who's from Gary, Indiana, that's where they were from.
Yeah, Robert T.
Exactly.
Yeah, Robert Turner. Yeah.
And if you Google VJ Records, VEEJAY, it'll blow your mind. the soundtrack of the lives that came out of that building, which is still there in Chicago, is 1349 Michigan Avenue. It was amazing. From Tyrone Davis to Shy Lights and Jackie Wilson, Curtis Mayfield, Sam Cooke. I mean, just in that block. But it wasn't like you would think Bourbon Street or people hanging. It was an industrial street back then. And so back then, if you were a musician at Chess Records, then you couldn't go down and play at VJ Records. Every label had its own sound, and it reflected in the musicians. When I started there, Ramsey Lewis, the piano player, played the jazz and what have you. His drummer was Maurice White, who created Earth, Wind, and Fire. Yeah, him and Charles Stephanie. But see, again, me and Minnie, we were kids, but we would go to the clubs and they would let us in. You know, and so it was an experience for me. And time went on. One of my mentors was Clarence Avant.
Wow.
Ernie and George Lena, United Record Distributors.
Wow,
man. So I really was in school and didn't know it. And
you
then,
got the foundation, bro.
Yeah.
You got a solid foundation.
Yeah. So when I decided to go open my own store, I worked for another black man. His name was Jimmy Manette.
That's 68.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He owned One Stop Records Incorporated. He had a number of wholesale houses and retail stores.
Right.
And he created a thing. We had mobile one-stops. I used to sell records wholesale out the trunk of my car to all the different mom and pop stores. It would be like Lee and Bob's Cleaners and Records, Sonny's TV Repair and Records. And so you had these outlets, and I literally sold close to $100,000 a month out of the trunk of my car. I had about 200 locations that I would hit just on the west side of Chicago.
But you were doing this for somebody else.
Oh, of course.
And then that's when you decided, look, man, I can do this for myself.
Exactly.
And you started George's Music Room.
Exactly. You learn what I learned from you go to these stores Fridays and Saturdays. See, that's where black folks bought their music from. The chain stores didn't have it. The downtown department stores didn't have black music. In Chicago, there was one white store called Rose Records on Wabash in downtown Chicago. Basically the only store that really sold black music. But you go to your neighborhood stores, you know, back then, the only reason you didn't have a job, your ass didn't want to work. And so Fridays, Saturdays, man, you get your paycheck, you go to the cleaners, you go to the liquor store, and you come to the record shop. You get that music. You have the basement parties, blue lights, you know, and at my peak, I had 15 full-time employees, and they all walked to work. I gave them their first jobs. They were 13, 14 years old. I was like Mr. Miyagi, man.
But you started off, you were the only employee for 3 years.
Exactly.
At George's Music Room, right?
Yep. My first store in the same block, I convinced the landlord to give me 90 days credit on the rent. That first store. I went and bought 145 and 6 albums.
Now, how did you convince him? Where did you get this business acumen from?
Well, part of it came from Fifth Ward, too, because I was sent down here. But my mother worked until the last half an hour before I was born in my parents' first restaurant in the Bronx, New York. And so seeing that, being exposed to that type of work ethic, then Mom and Dad got divorced, and it was me and my mother. We moved a couple of times, and then one day she comes home. I'm getting ready to start 7th grade, and she says, "Hey, you want to go to Texas and live with your grandmother?" I said, "Yeah." You know, I had been watching Roy Rogers and all that on TV. You understand? Look, took a train down. I started crying when I saw Cars. I thought they were gonna pick me up at the stagecoach.
Yeah.
I swear, I go to Texas. Yeah. And my grandmother owned Mama Alice's Cafe on Orleans and Gregg Street, right across from E.O. Smith. Mm-hmm. The school I went to for 7th grade.
Yeah, I went to E.O. Smith in 7th grade.
Yeah,
just 7th grade.
Yeah, a different era, of course. But right. Yeah, this is when the fire department was on the other side of the street, and Mama Alice's Cafe was right next door to the fire department. We lived behind the cafe, and I used to have to get up in the morning, open the cafe, get it ready, and then I'd go to school.
Yeah.
So the work ethic was instilled in me at a young age.
Yeah. How did you meet R. Kelly?
Well, I used to see him perform in the subways in Chicago. He was a street performer. Mm-hmm. And I would just see him. It wasn't about meeting him. It wasn't until years later, of course, with George's, and as popular as our store was, he would come and do in-stores with his records. And at one point when I married my wife, Regina Daniels, this was in 93, and my wife used to be Whitney Houston's publicist. So we have kind of some deep roots there. And something had happened, and Barry Hankerson, R. Kelly's manager, called me and said, "Hey, George, your wife is a publicist, and we just fired ours," and they were in Atlanta, and they wanted to hire a publicist. So me and Regina hopped on the plane and went to Atlanta. That's how my wife became his publicist at that time. This is like 1994, maybe 95. And so our relationship was built at that point.
So when you started appearing in the videos, and you always seem to be having fun, boy. You got smile, boy. That smile, boy. You
That's always been my weapon.
Yeah, yeah.
Look, because of the way I was sent around, see, because I was talking to one of my nephews on the way here, and see, I don't have any lifelong friends, okay? The way I was shifted around, my mother shipped me off from New York to Texas, saved my grandmother. She got ill. I wound up living with a whole bunch of different aunts and uncles. Then I wound up in Philadelphia with an uncle, my mother's youngest brother. I was scared shitless of him because he beat your ass. And out of nowhere, my brother, who was in medical school at the time to become a dentist, he called me from Chicago and said, "Hey, you want to come live with me in Chicago?" I said, "Yeah." And I was starting 8th grade by then. So I go to Chicago. And my brother took care of me. He was married, had one child, had 2 more children by the time he graduated dental school in 1962. We went to the graduation, 3,000 medical school graduates, University of Illinois Medical School, and 6 were black, and 1 was my brother. And see, so those stories are about the examples that I saw and what it takes to achieve. So no matter what you do, you can achieve at it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you and R. Kelly fall out?
Well, I mean, it was a process. I'm not going to say we fell out. We just went our separate ways. Let's put it like that.
Because y'all was tight, man. Y'all was super tight.
Oh, yeah.
Y'all families were tight.
Yeah.
Right?
We were close. I mean, it got to the point, it's like when 9/11 hit. And Rob had just gone to Europe to do a tour. And then 9/11 hit. He was over in Europe. He was the only American artist performing in Europe at the time. And so, my wife and I, we were home. And I get a call from the president of Jive Records. And he said, "Hey, George," which I was surprised to get a call from him. He said, "Look, I'm calling, cut to the chase. I need you. We need you to do us a favor." I said, "What?" "Rob wants to come home, but we need to keep him in Europe because he's the only artist that represents America that's touring in Europe." I said, "Yeah, and what do you want me to do?" They said, "Well, everybody knows you have a pretty strong influence on him, and we need someone to go convince him to stay." And so I agreed. I said, "Okay." My wife and I, we catch a plane. This is maybe a week and a half to 2 weeks right after 9/11. We take a plane. We were literally the only people on the plane because nobody was flying back then. We get to Dusseldorf, Germany, and we get to the hotel, and the crew is hanging around the lobby and stuff, and they're surprised to see us. And Rob comes in, and he's just excited. We went and talked to him, what have you. He wanted to know. He said, "Man, what are you doing here?" I said, "Well, I was told that you wanted to come home, and you need to stay here and represent the country." And so we kicked it around a little bit more. He said, "Okay, I'll do it under one condition." I said, "Okay." He said, "You got to stay here with me and go on the tour." And that was, for me, it was like going back to grammar school, if you will, because we were on tour buses, 6 tours, traveling all over Europe and seeing the things that I read about in books, the White Cliffs of Dover and so on and so forth. And so that was an experience. And we even got closer then behind that type of traveling.
Yeah.
And so as time had gone on, and then when the issues came out about his private shenanigans, if you will, which I wasn't aware of, but he was so shrewd and smart at separating all of those things. I mean, there's a guy that, that had that yellow hair that was in the White House. This similar methods of keeping things separate with, your right hand doesn't know what your left hand's doing. And he was good at that. And when I became aware of all of those things, and I started going out on the road with him at home, and I was like policing stuff. We get on two of us, and girls would come out there, and I was checking IDs. And some of his other people in the crew would say, "Man, what are you doing?" I said, "Man, he's going through all of this mess. Let's protect it." And I wouldn't let these young girls get on the bus and so on and so forth. And some kind of way, I got moved out of the way of that responsibility that I took on by myself. And one thing led to another, and it just got bad. And I felt that, I could be better served taking care of my own business at George's Music Room.
Mm. Yeah, I've been around R. Kelly a number of times, and I've never seen any inappropriate behavior with young girls. Not even remotely.
Exactly.
It wasn't even a situation where these girls even look at all like close to looking underage. I never seen any of that type of stuff around him. Yeah.
He knew how to hide it. He was a whiz at it. These are things I heard about later, but he used to have girls hidden around the studio, different rooms and so on and so forth. And, he was an unscrupulous character, man. There's no ifs, ands, buts about it. But, he managed to keep everything in their positions, and folks didn't know.
How do you feel about what he's going through right now as far as him being incarcerated and losing his position in his career right now, and how what his legacy is shaping up to look like?
Well, when the old saying, you make your bed, you got to sleep in it. And so I'm disappointed. His music is some of the greatest music in the world, but he could have been as big as any of these other artists are today with helping other careers. And he was too selfish to even do that. He wrote songs for folks and what have you, but how great he could have been. And so, I don't feel bad. Like I said, you make your bed, you got to sleep in it.
Who are some of the artists that came through George's Music Room that really impressed you? You've seen them all. You've seen everybody from Mary J. Blige to LL to Ghetto Boys to the Temptations.
Yeah.
You've seen it all. You seen James Brown, the Etta Jameses. We can go on and on and on and on. No artist, nobody doing black music, R&B, hip hop, jazz, blues. Nobody over the last 4 decades or so has been able to come through without even get Chicago especially, without having George's Music Room put the stamp on. So there has to be some that was like, yo, that was wild, or this person is really, really special.
Mm-hmm. Well, there were so many, and they came from so many different backgrounds. And mind you, these were teenagers. Mary J. was like 17 when she came to the in-store with me at Midnight Sale for 411. She was so impressive in the industry that the first female black senator, Carol Moseley Braun, showed up at my store at midnight to meet Mary J. The Destiny's Child, they were kids when they came to the store. Alicia Keys. The list goes on and on, that era. And my store became the place because of the things that I did within the industry. It wasn't just George on the West Side. Because of my mentors, I was encouraged to join other trade organizations. I would go to Jack the Rapper, Urban Network, BRE, Southeast Music Conference, Midwest Radio and Music. These were the black music conferences, but they concentrated on records and radio, not records, radio, and retail. I brought the other R with the retail because I would be the only person with a store at these conferences. And I remember telling Sidney Miller, we were at the BRE black radio exclusive in New Orleans. And they were one of the companies was sponsoring a boat ride, and so I went over to we were staying at the Sheridan on Canal. I was on the boat, and then I went to Sidney Miller, and I said, Sidney, why am I the only record store at your conventions? And he said, George, you know, you're right. And from that point on, I started organizing, you know, encouraging representatives in certain markets to get them stores to come to the conventions and see what it's all about. And then Terry Rossi, who worked for BMG, which was like RCA Records or what have you, and she worked for Billboard before she got there. And one of her last jobs at Billboard was to get the black retailers together in Atlanta at the Jack the Rapper. I'll never forget. That's when I met Tommy at Stickhorse Records, was here in Houston, and Mr. Blues out of Dallas, Barry Beal, Shantanese Records in Detroit, Dad's Drive-Thru out of Camden, New Jersey. I mean, VIP Records, Long Beach. And this is when I first met all these other black record store owners.
At what point did you start the coalition? Because you started a coalition
Yes.
for record store owners.
Well, I started that because hip-hop had started taking off, right? And there was this company called Young Systems. Now, at this time, I'm on the board of NARM. I became the first person of color to ever be on the board of NARM. This is Tower Records and Target stores and all of this. 9 members on the board. And I was the first person of color to ever be on this board. And they came up, they started mentioning about this point of sale system. Back in the day, we just had a cash register. There wasn't no barcodes on records back in those days. And so they wanted to convince me to convince these stores, you know, we need to do this system called SoundScan. This is a point of sale system where you scan, and back in the day, I was either faxing my sales reports to the radio stations, or they call up and we tell them what's the hottest that's selling. Now, this system gives these people access to my cash register, know exactly what I'm selling and how many pieces of it I'm selling. And the system came out of Atlanta, Georgia. Like I said, it was a Young system. And the system cost $15,000. But you can get it, they finance it for you, 15% interest. Bottom line is that wasn't the sticking point in my gut, is that I'm giving you access to my sales. So that's when I started calling other store owners and letting them know, don't buy the system, do not get on this system. I said, you get on this system, they're going to put us out of business. And then I started getting bad press within the industry. George don't want black stores to modernize. They don't want, he doesn't want them to have the new technology.
I bet you $1 to a donut they used a black person to come at you first. I bet a black person led the charge.
Oh, they did. They did. They wrote the articles in Billboard magazine about me and so on and so forth. But that's historically, that's how it's always been done, you know? And so I organized the National United Independent Retailers. At this time, I think you remember Mary Datcher, who used to work for Def Jam, what have you. She was working for me, and she helped me organize. And Mary Datcher now, she's like a political activist in Chicago. She was working for Bobby Rush, the congressman, and then when Jonathan Jackson just took over, she helped him with his transition into that. But Mary was extremely sharp. She was the first female promotion person that Def Jam hired, and she was like 18 years old. And the first R&B and only R&B artist that Def Jam ever signed was Allison Williams. And Mary wound up going on the road with her. And see, so her background was really sharp. And so Mary came working for me, helped me do my marketing and stuff, because I was developing the store. And so I called all these store owners, group of them. I said, hey, I'm going to get you guys to come to Chicago. We're going to have a meeting, and we got to figure out some strategy. They said, well, how are we going to get there? I said, are you willing to come? So I called my label reps at the different labels. And I told them, I want you to pay the way for these guys to come, and they did. So I had about 7 or 8 black store owners from around the country come to Chicago, and we met at the Legion Hall across the street from my store on Roosevelt Road. And we organized NUIR, National United Independent Retailers. Mm-hmm. And that's when we started the movement. And I was learning so much about the industry that we weren't taught. It's just like the merchandising. They used to come and do displays in our stores, and we thanked them and whatever. We didn't know we were supposed to get paid. When I got involved in NARM, NARM had a national, with the NARM Retail Certification Program, and it was administered at different colleges around the country. And in Chicago, it was at the University of Chicago. It was a 7-day course for 12 hours a day. I took that course, and I was there. I was the only black person in there, and that retailers from all over the world. And I learned the marketing, the merchandising, and as you remember coming to my store, the way my displays were done and so on and so forth. And the light boxes and the light box programs that the labels would have when they do displays and what have you. And see, they would pay for that space. It's like Tower Records. For their windows, it would run about $25,000 a month per window. So they're sitting in the big stores with 10 windows or better. That's $250,000 a month. They could literally give the music away. That's what I was fighting so hard to convince these black store owners, don't get on SoundScan. And some did, and sure enough, that same CD that I had to sell for $18.99, it would cost me $12.40 wholesale. They were selling that tower for $9.99. So it was cheaper for me to go to my competition than to go to my wholesale.
Wow.
That was the beginning of the end. This was before Napster.
So do you think that Big Brother actually cut off his nose to spite his face by coming up with that sound scan and all of that stuff and trying to force the independents out of business?
Well, the whole thing is about greed. Bottom line is, just like the black executives I told you about earlier, nobody believed in rap. They were all independents, like you were on Rap A Lot Records down here in Houston. Y'all depended on us to break the records, us and DJs.
Mm-hmm.
And see, the white stores, they didn't know, but then these white kids, when I was doing in-stores, all of a sudden I had lines around the corner and suburban white kids in line at George's on the west side of Chicago to meet these artists.
Mm-hmm.
They were saying, wait, what is this music? And that's when they started making those moves.
Yeah, that was a big deal. I remember when we came through, the last one we did, I think, was
The Resurrection.
The Resurrection.
We did the thing
came through with the 3 caskets.
Yeah, it was Kelly Robinson. He was working for the label, the distribution.
Yeah.
And so we planned this in-store, the midnight sale. And so we were sitting out putting our heads, because I was really creative, and we decided to turn the yard into a cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, that was the funniest thing. And so I'm talking to Kelly. He said, well, where are we going to get coffins at? So I called my friends down at the funeral home about 5 blocks away. And they said, yeah, they had a coffin for Bushwick, if you remember.
Yeah, we all had a coffin.
Yeah.
Remember? It was 3 coffins.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I had set up the black tunnel where they buy the CD, they walk through, and you all were inside the tent signing.
Yeah,
we made a production. We had fog machines, and man, look, the neighborhood went crazy. And at midnight, we had the hearse came around with the coffins. Yeah, we had pallbearers and all that. I mean, but that's the way, I made black retail show business.
Yeah,
and that was the key that separated us. I mean, it was showtime. When people came to George's, they got entertained. And today, I can't go anywhere without somebody. And these are grown folks with their kids and some grandkids that remember the day they met the Ghetto Boys or any of the other groups. But the impression that we made in the neighborhood stands today.
Long lasting.
Yeah, we had good times.
How much money what's the most money you made in a single year?
Oh, God. I don't know. You just have to ask my bookkeeper, because I honestly wasn't paying that much attention to the money. I knew the sales were there, the books were tight.
Well, you know the difference between 10,000 and a million.
Of course I do. Hey, it's called cash flow, and I dealt with cash flow. I was enjoying the ability, and then when I opened up a second store and what have you, and then in 2000, it was 1999. Mayor Daley surprised me with a visit. I was celebrating 30 years in business at that time, because I had opened the store in 1969. And he came and gave me a plaque for the years I spent there on Roosevelt. We had like a news conference out front. And he said, "Hey, George, show me your store." So we go inside. He looks around and what have you. And at that time, they were rebuilding Midway. And then he came to me. He said, "I got an idea for you." I said, "Thank you. Whatever it would be." He said, "We'll get back to you." I didn't think anything of it. And 3 months later, I get a phone call. The mayor wants you to come down City Hall for a meeting. I said, "When?" They said, "Tuesday." I said, "What time?" They said, 1 o'clock. I was down there at 11:30. And so I'm excited. I go up there and say, "Hey, Mr. Daniels, have a seat. The mayor will be out." And so I'm wondering, where's everybody at, The meeting, at 1 o'clock straight up, he opens the door and says, "Hey, George, come on back." It was him and I for 4 hours just kicking it. I told him my history of coming to Chicago when his father was the mayor and so on and so forth. Got to near the end, he said, "Okay, you tell me what you want and I'll tell you what I want." I said, "Well, I didn't come down here with any ideas of asking for anything." He said, "Well, I'm rebuilding Midway Airport and I want you to be in my airport. Can you do it?" And I'm sitting there trying to be cool, boy. I said,
Yeah,
I think I could. Exactly. I said, I think I can make that happen. And the black bank in the neighborhood there, the Community Bank of Lawndale, they loaned me the money and the whole darn thing. And a guy, God rest his soul, his name is Robert Steele. Robert Steele was the head of Lawndale Business and Development before he became a commissioner in Chicago. Because I remember him telling me, he said, "George, if anything ever comes up that you need some help with figuring out, just give me a call one day." And when I got this opportunity, and they sent me all this red tape and the paperwork you got to go through, it's not like just renting a store. I got to get contracted. I got to get, design for the location, the space utilization.
Specs a certain.
It had to fit the space.
Right.
And so I'll never forget, I was getting ready to call the mayor the next morning. I went to bed. And I was going to call the mayor that night and said, "Thanks, but I can't do this." Because I didn't know how to do that. And then it hit me. He said, "Hey, call Robert." I called Robert Steele. He said, "George, bring me the papers. Let me see what you got." He looked at me, he said, "Oh, we could do this." And it was him that guided me. He helped me get the contract, everything, my new logo, all the things that were designed. And that store was sharp, boy. That was a beautiful store, man.
It was. That was money, man. That was
That
George Jetson style.
Man, that was a class act, man.
Yeah, that was the Jetsons. That was George Jetsons. Yeah, boy, that was dope.
Yeah. People would come through the airport and they see George's. Is that George from Roosevelt Road? Yeah.
Yeah, and you ran it for 17 years in the airport?
17 years.
Yeah. And here's the thing. With all the success that you've had with George's Music Room and all of the artists, the memories that you created, I would suspect that there had to be some issues. There had to be some problems, some valleys, right? With all of those peaks, there had to be some valleys.
Oh,
because when you started, I think 69. You started George's Music Room in 69.
Mm-hmm.
So that meant that you had 45s, and then you went through that. You had 8 tracks.
8 tracks first. It was 8 tracks, 45s, and albums.
Yeah, 8 tracks, 45s, and albums, and then came the CD.
Yes.
And then came the cassette first, and then the CD.
Then CD. Yeah.
Came the cassette, then the CD.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm thinking, like, with all of these changes, your biggest problem, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, absolutely, but I'm thinking the biggest problem had to be the modernization of music. Yeah. I mean, am I on to something here?
Well, it wasn't a modernization. It was a transition of music from analog to digital. And then the CD is compressed. That's why when you listen to an album and versus the same CD, you hear the difference. But it's almost like what's going on right now with artificial intelligence and what have you. This so-called music they call today, which is just beats. And all of this music, you go to the clubs, the things that our young people are growing up with now, look, it's like when Smokey Robinson taught you how to say "I'm sorry" to a girl. Temptation is "the girl's all right with me." Mm-hmm. My girl. These songs you grew up with, and it was part of the soundtrack of your life.
Mm-hmm.
When rap first started, they sampled the classic songs. And so the whole family could enjoy them. Now, you need somebody to interpret what the hell they're saying. And you got to get a 10-year-old kid.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't know what they're saying, but it's that same beat. It's not music. And we're being so programmed now for self-destruction. That's what's going on right now. Because we're being led by the most powerful music ever created in the world, and it's hip-hop. But what it is today, it's dangerous.
How do you change the trajectory?
I don't know. Because now you have parents that are growing up playing it for their kids. There was no such thing as social media a few years ago. Now everybody has their own television in their hand. They're creating these images.
Yeah, I can't say that when I was growing up, there was a separation between parent and child in the music the adult music that the kids were allowed to listen to.
Yeah.
Even me, I mean, I was making music that had explicit lyrics, and I wouldn't let my kids listen to it.
Exactly.
I wouldn't let my kids listen to it until they got to be a certain age where they understood what they was listening to, and I would explain to them, what they were listening to. But first I would ask them, what do you listen to? What do you hear?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? What do you think? And what do you get from this? I would have those type of conversations with them. But I see now oftentimes these kids are just, oh man.
They're on their own. But
some of them are actually rapping the lyrics themselves.
They
They're
know 'em.
using these No, I'm talking about actually like they're a little artist. I saw a little rapper, a little dude, had to be no more than 5-6 years
Cussing
old.
and everything. Yeah.
Cussing, talking about he got hoes and something like this and that.
Why wouldn't he?
Yeah.
If that's what he's exposed to. See, because just like when you were saying you were talking to your kids, but your kids got to go to school with these other kids whose parents aren't like you. It was just like, remember when they came out with parental advisory stickers?
Yeah.
I was parental advisory before they had the damn sticker. Look, little, so you ain't buying this. This is music we wouldn't play in the store on our speakers outside. If you want this, you bring your parents in. And parents would come and I explained to them, what the lyrics are and what have you. And if you're sure you want your child to have this, well, he got his Walkman, long as I ain't got to hear it. And then they would buy it. Not realizing the same issues and would program them to like Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf and what have you, the music that they heard, the Temptations of Motown sound, program them the same way this music. And now it's going to another stage now where when it got so explicit, when radio stopped wanting to beep because they had to bleep out too much, then they started breaking records where? At the strip clubs. This is where you got your Nicki Minaj's from. Lil' Kim was literally the first one. Then it went from there, and this is what we have now. And we're selling images. That images that's going to only last so long. Look how long Diana Ross's career has lasted. The ladies of soul music and R&B music. I don't know what's going on now.
Did you know Diana Ross personally?
I met her.
Yeah.
And one crazy story, I was in L.A., it was for, I think, probably a 70th birthday or somewhere in between there. And Biz Marquis. I was staying we both at the Hyatt Regency Hotel on Sunset. And he said, George, what you doing tonight? I said, nothing. I happen to be out there for some kind of music event or something. He said, well, I got a gig tonight. You want to come with me? I said, sure. So I met him there. We went out to Malibu, big old crib on the ocean. And it was a surprise birthday party for Diana Ross.
It was at a house?
It was somebody's house.
Okay.
But her daughter and there was, Barry Gordy was there, came, a bunch of other folks and stuff. And that was the night I met her. It was the most amazing experience to be in the presence of that type of greatness, But then to have been a part of that era, because when me and Minnie were together, to watch the Supremes from Motown and so on and so forth. And one of the stories I have, the guy that really propelled Chess Records started Motown with Barry Gordy. And his name was Billy Rocal Davis. He was a producer and what have you at Motown. And the Chess Brothers were starting this record label, Chess Records in Chicago. And Motown was putting this music out, and they knew it was Billy. And so they literally sent a gigolo to Detroit to break Billy up with his girlfriend, who was Barry Gordy's sister. And they wound up getting him to come to Chicago. And Billy was the one that was producing all of the acts at Chess Records.
So was the Gigolo successful?
Yeah. And the Gigolo happened to be Etta James' boyfriend.
Wow.
Then Billy comes down. One of the first hit records Etta James recorded was All I Could Do Is Cry.
Wow.
And it was about both of their situations. And then I'm quoting these stories because we were teenagers, we were kids, me and Minnie, but I was told those stories. Yeah, Chess. And one other story that in Cadillac Records they didn't cover the two Jews, Leonard and Phil Chess. They also bought a radio station in Chicago that played black music back in the day, because back in the day, even down here in Houston, all the black music was only on AM radio, and it was always to the right of the dial, all the way in. I don't care if it was in New York, WBLS, everything. And so they bought this radio station, WCES, in 1963, and they changed the call letters to WVON, Voice of the Negro.
Wow.
Became one of the most powerful black stations, only 1,000 watts with the big antenna, but it became the most influential black station in the Midwest. And those two guys in Cadillac Records were the ones that owned that station. That's one of the stories they missed in that story they told. That was a powerful story. They had so many, Herb Kent, E. Rodney Jones, Isabel Joseph Johnson, Bernadine Seaborg. They had so many disc jockeys on there. Purvis Spann, and today, that same station, WVON, is owned by Purvis Spann's daughter, Melanie Spann.
Man, how do you remember all of this stuff? I mean, like, I know it happened.
I drink a lot of water.
You drink a lot of
with gin in it.
Yeah. Man, how old was Minnie when she passed?
31.
31.
Yep.
Wow.
1979. I think it was July 12th.
You remember?
Oh, yeah. Minnie's birthday is November 8th.
Scorpio. I'm not surprised. You know, I'm Scorpios, man. You know, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
November 8th.
Yeah.
November 8th. Okay, I got it. And where were you when you heard?
I was getting ready to go into a club on the north side of Chicago. At that time, I was doing quite well. I had a few cars. I had a 1949 Jaguar, and I mean, it was incredible, man.
Mm-hmm.
The lifestyle. I had moved to the north side. The hottest TV show on back then was The Jeffersons. I was living on the south side, but that song, Moving On Up. And I wound up moving from the south side to the north side, man.
Mm-hmm.
And I was up there at the club. I was in a high rise. And I remember I went to like 3 or 4 of the buildings over there. My boss's son, his oldest son, came with me because I was also working a job at United Record Distributors. At the same time, I had my store. That only maybe for a year or so. But anyway, he came with me, and we were going to these buildings. I had a big old afro and stuff, and you know, a lot of militancy was going on in the media of black folks. And them white folks saw me come in there. No, we ain't got no apartments. Then we went to this one building at 1660 North LaSalle. It was called Eugenie Square. We went into the office. Just so happens, my boss's son knew the guy that was dating the manager of the building. He was black, she was white. And they showed me an apartment, what have you. It was on the 41st floor, 4108, 1 bedroom with a balcony. My rent, it was $290 a month. Back then, that was a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
Back then,
yeah.
shoot, man.
Yeah.
I moved up there. And that was that dream of moving on up, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then when the news came, because I would see Minnie at this disco called Faces in Chicago. Like when people talk about Studio 54 in New York, in Chicago, the sister club was Faces. And that was maybe one of 6 black folks they would let in there on any regular basis unless you were a star or something. And Minnie would pop in there every now and then, and the thing we would laugh about, you know, our past and stuff. And that song Memory Lane, that was actually that was actually about me and her.
That was about you?
Yeah.
Get out of here.
If you listen to the lyrics, me and I saw her, we started laughing. I said, "You did that?" Yeah. So
She wrote those lyrics by herself?
her and her husband, Richard Rudolph.
Did Richard know that was about you?
I'm pretty sure he did. You know, it's Minnie met Richard when she joined this group called Rotary Connection. See, she also did a solo project under a different name because back then the name Minnie Riperton was not theatrical enough. So she did a song called Lonely Girl under the name of Andrea Davis. Andrea was one of her nieces, and Davis was Billy Davis's last name, so Andrea Davis.
How long did y'all date?
From 64, about 5 years.
Oh,
5,
yeah.
6 years, yeah.
That was about you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is one of my favorite songs ever.
Tell you.
I listen to that song. I get in these moods where I listen to the same certain song over and over and over and over
Because
again.
the lyrics.
And then I may not listen to it for months. Sometimes I may not listen to it for years. But when I start listening to it, and I think the last time I heard it, I listened to it was maybe about a couple months ago. But before that, I was listening to it for like an entire month straight.
Yeah.
Just that is a beautiful song, man.
No doubt. But then, if you get a chance, look up Andrea Davis, and she did a song called Lonely Girl. And she would hit those notes on this song here, but people didn't know it was Minnie.
Not the lonely girl that we hear, that we know.
No,
that was remade
not
over
by
and over.
Eddie Holman.
Yeah.
Not him.
Okay.
She did it called Lonely Girl. And we would go to the clubs because, again, like I said, they would let us in because of our association with Chess Records. And Minnie had, the song was being played on WVON because the Chess Brothers owned the station. They would play their stuff. And so we go to the clubs. Tyrone Davis would be performing or whoever, because back in those days, every club had a house band. Wasn't no DJs. When intermission, you played the jukebox. And so me and Minnie would come in with our young asses, and they let us in. We wasn't their age, but we wasn't drinking and what have you. And then it'd be Tyrone Davis, what have you, and they say, we have a young lady in here, Andrea Davis is in. They would hear the song, and they wanted her to get up and sing. So Minnie would get up and sing and start hitting those high notes. Then I'd walk up and give her $1. Then people start bringing her money.
Just sitting it up.
Hey, man, we'd be on the bus stop because I didn't have a car. We'd be counting out loot on the bus stop.
Yeah.
Oh, we had some unique times, man.
What can you tell us about Minnie Riperton that we haven't heard publicly? Like, about her, like, what type of person was she privately?
She was just a loving person. I mean, she was, it was Clarice, Elaine, and Sharon were her 3 sisters. She had 2 brothers, Ronnie and Rip. And she was the youngest. And it was just, she was a kind person. She was just sweet. It's just like when you see Maya Rudolph, that's Minnie's daughter.
Yeah.
That she's the same. When Minnie died, Maya was 6. And that was tough. Like I said, that night that I heard it on the radio, I couldn't believe it because I had seen her a few months before, and she said she was, in remission and what have you. And but she was such a loving, kind person, and we would babysit her sister's kids at times, her and I, and so it was.
Y'all was babysitting, man, or was y'all like letting the baby watch themselves while y'all went in another room?
No. Yeah, no, it's the one thing. It's that's the unique thing about myself growing up and the values that I was taught, and how to conduct myself.
Okay.
And see, so it was a thing. I was young like any other young guy. You have the ideas and thoughts and what have you, but there's value system. You got to be strong and maintain. And I was fortunate enough to be able to, kind of conduct myself in that way at such a young age.
Give us one of those. Give us a nugget, like one of those most memorable stories about Minnie. As you can tell, I'm really fascinated about Minnie Riperton. I really love Minnie Riperton.
Yeah, well, it's let me see. It's God. There's so many different things that we had experienced together, but I guess, just being at the studio, because when I visualize what that neighborhood used to look like, now Chess Records is a blues museum, and they do live performance. Sometimes I host during the summer, every Thursday, but they have live blues right next door to the museum. And so when Minnie first moved, got her own place, because I was living with my parents on Chicago, on Michigan Avenue, on the South Side, and her manager got her an apartment on 83rd Street, on South Side Chicago, and to see her manage her own apartment and so on and so forth, and to become the lady that she became. And then time went on, of course, when she met Richard. For me, just watching her develop into the lady that she developed in. And then when she had cancer and how she handled it, because she was the first woman to ever talk about cancer on television. And I think it was Flip Wilson that was hosting the Johnny Carson show this particular night. And he had Minnie on. And she brought the audience to silence when she started talking about her battle with cancer. And so they showed the strength that she had to do that. And that's when I think it was Jimmy Carter, or whatever president, that they honored her. Or was it Reagan? I think it was Reagan, maybe, that honored her for, bringing up the subject, such a subject that was so hidden and kept inside. And that's when, because of her, the National Cancer Society really started the major campaigns because it was going on all along, but they would keep it under the cover, system. So I would say the strength she had to be the spokesperson to create the movement for the Cancer Society, I would say, because I don't think they even talked about it before she brought it up.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Man, what do you do to keep yourself going like you do? I mean, keep and stay looking as young as you are. You're 77. You just celebrated your birthday.
Yeah. Yes.
Your 77th birthday, and that's looking good. Not just looking good, but you appear to be in shape. I saw you moving. You weren't just moving. You were whisking. Like I saw you like sliding and gliding.
Yeah.
Like, man, George is like. Say, bro, like if I just looked at you from the side or walking, you're moving like a teenager. What's going on, man? I mean, is it the greens and ham hocks? Because I know that's your favorite meal.
Well, it was.
Oh, it was. Yeah. So you shut that down.
I made adjustments in my diet, but I'm very grateful and people will call it blessed and what have you. I call it, checking yourself. See, a lot of folks don't know. I went through, before I met you guys, what have you, I went through a 10-year addiction. I mean, the 80s, I don't know how. I kept a store. I lost my condos. I wanted to have 2 condos and cars. I lost it all to crack. And for 10 years.
Now, how did you manage that? How did you get through that without?
I lost it all.
Everybody knowing.
Well,
exactly.
everybody did know. Around the store and the whole thing, they didn't know.
Around.
Yeah, because my first store was at 3937 Roosevelt. Okay. Then I went to 3921, and that's where I got curious, because all the record stores, we had a head department. We sold black light bulbs and rolling papers and all that stuff back then. And it was 1980. My mother was living here in Houston, and she had a brain aneurysm.
Elvina.
Elvina,
yeah.
Hillary, yeah. And so my brother and my 2 sisters, nobody could come down. And so I had just gotten married to a school teacher in September of 79. And that January or so, what have you, and mother decided she's going to get this surgery. So I came down. I was staying in Pleasantville at my mother's house and whatever. And at that time, I was dabbling, tooting cocaine and so on and so forth. And then I was gone for about 4 or 5 months I was staying down here. And people were taking care of my store. Like I said, I just gotten married. I get back, get to the store, and I'm waiting on customers and stuff. And a guy comes in and said, "Man, you gotta get those pipes." I said, "I got them marijuana pipes I had." He said, "No, them cocaine pipes." I said, "What is that?" So I called my supplier, and back then, before they called it crack, it was called Freebase. And they had kits, literally manufactured kits with a plate, with a tray, with a bottle of ether, and an empty bottle, what have you. And they used to take your cocaine, put it in the ether, shake it up, pour it on the plate. The ether would evaporate, and that's what Freebase was. And one day, I got curious, and I said, "Hey, man, here's $50. Bring me some of that stuff. See what the hell this is." Biggest mistake I made.
Did you get curious because people were buying it? Like,
I just wanted to know what it was, bro. Yeah, I was tooting. Okay,
Yeah.
I got exposed to it when I moved in that building that I told you about. But I tried it, and that the Temptations made a song called "Take a Stroll Through My Mind." One time, one drag, that's all it took.
Yeah.
Ooh, and I was hooked. And it did. That was May of 1980.
What was the low point? What's the lowest point? I mean, what was the one that was like, this, I got to do something different?
No, it wasn't no gotta do. You didn't care. You didn't even realize you were addicted. Man, I got to a point where I lost the condos. I moved to the west side, not far from my stores. I was actually opening up another store while I was going through this addiction. And I got 2 stores, and I'm riding a 10-speed bicycle between my stores because I don't even have no car.
Mm-hmm.
But I kept going at it.
So how did you make the turn? Did a woman help you make the turn, or did somebody see a friend?
Man, look, because those stores, I wound up getting evicted from my stores. Set out on the street. Guy next door, he let me move myself into his place. I opened up the little small location. Then the big store that you all came to, that used to be a church. That was True Vine Baptist Church. And you remember the box of Marvin Hagler?
Absolutely.
That was his grandfather's church.
Marvin
That's
Hagler.
It. Yeah. And they had a school upstairs, but then they had a fire. And so they left that church. It was boarded up and so on and so forth. And so this guy I moved in with, who allowed me to move my stuff and open this small store, and I had the apartment on the 3rd floor. Then, me and my 2 kids' mother, because I had met a young lady during that time, and my Maxine and George Jr. And I started making plans to get that building. And sure enough, he tried to get me evicted from his place. But eventually I wound up getting into that place, and the neighborhood, from the guys from the pool room, plumbers and carpenters and all, they were just rooting for me, and they came and helped me build that store. And one day, because the whole front was bought.
Free of charge?
Yeah, they came and helped. All I needed was material. And they were there. A friend of mine who was hooked up with the city kept the inspectors away, and he got a friend of his to come and put the lights on for me. So, because it was gutted, and upstairs was gutted, and plumbers and carpenters, all from the neighborhood, man. And then one day we were inside trying to figure out, because the floors was all messed up, whatever, and keep banging on the door. And the Puerto Rican guy, short guy, his name was Alex. I'll never forget him. He said, "I'm looking for George." I said, "George." He said, "Well, Reverend Scott from the big church down the street there, which I know, sent about 5 blocks down. He said, you're a good man, and you need some help, and I can help you." I said, "Well," he said, "Well, let me see what you got." And he come in and look. He said, "We could do this." And he told me, "Tell me what I wanted." And I gave him a kind of outline of what I wanted. And when you came to the store, that's what he did, even with the whole glass front and stuff. My dad loaned me some money, and we were going picking up the glass, and he was cutting the glass, and he made the shelving and the showcases, all of that.
And how did you get the money for the inventory?
I started with the inventory I had left, and the guys in the neighborhood, the street guys, the dudes that I used to buy all that junk from.
Yeah. They
would come and they give me the money and say, "Look, I want this, this, and this." They would pay me, and I get it for them.
Right.
And I slowly built
And
the
they getting
inventory.
stuff early too, so
Yeah.
they getting exclusive stuff
They get
also.
that, yeah. But the whole thing is
Yeah.
they want to help me like everybody else did.
Yeah.
It was the most beautiful story. I couldn't explain it, and see, it was no way I was going to disappoint them by getting strong. I stopped selling paraphernalia. I would not sell nothing, no mix, none of that. I stopped it. That way I didn't want. And then I had a group of dudes. They were like Bruce Lee kind of young black dudes. They were around there, and they were keeping drug dealers away from me. They were kicking niggas' asses over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't bring that shit around George. And that's how I kicked it. I didn't want to let them
That's
down.
dope, bro. That's dope. That's
Yeah.
a testament to your character.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a testament when you do good, you know, sometimes it comes back to you, man, tenfold.
And it's been coming back, because I tell
Yeah.
you, that was 1989, 1990, because we got that store open Christmas 1989.
Finish this statement for me. If I knew then
What I know
what
now.
I know now, I would.
I would not have bought that first piece of crack. Simple as that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I can also sympathize with those that are addicted.
Yeah.
I have no ill feelings about them, because I was innocent. I just want to know what was so intriguing, because nobody gets addicted on purpose. You know, and we have so many folks now who are addicted on pharmaceutical drugs.
You know, that's what always scared me about using drugs.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that I thought I was a goody two shoes or nothing, because I was with it. You know what I'm saying? But that's the thing I saw early on growing up.
You saw what happened.
I saw what was happening to other people that was using drugs, and I heard the same story. People kept saying, well, I didn't know it was going to do me like that. I thought I could just do it and then get off of it. I can do it just one time. I was just going to do it one time. I kept hearing that kind of story. And this is when I was like 13, 14 years old. I would hear stuff like this.
Yeah.
So, and I remember looking for my mother one day. I went into this cafe in Fifth Ward looking for a place where she used to hang out at. And I couldn't find her, so I went into the bathroom and I saw this dude crouched over the toilet shooting up heroin. And that really just reinforced my fears. And I was like, yeah, I'm not doing it because I don't know. Like, I can't control. I don't like the idea of not being in control of my
How old were you
brain. I was about 14 at that time.
Okay. And see, for me, growing up in New York City, and back then, heroin addicts, you see them because, you know, my dad and mom had the restaurants in Harlem and the Bronx. We were living in Queens, but then they would always bring me to Harlem to get my hair cut. And so I would see these junkies. And so you see the abscesses on their arms, shoulders. That was enough to tell me as a child, I'm not going to be doing that. But see, you grow up and you see this stuff that you just smoke it.
Yeah.
That nothing told me that was going to get me addicted, how much I would like it. And it takes your mind. Period. Nothing's more important. And I mean, I overlooked, I'm so grateful that my kids turned out to be fine, you know?
Yeah.
Because they were born during the time I was going through my addiction. And they survived, and they're doing great today. So it was a frightening time, and I'm not ashamed to talk about it, you know, because it gives me strength and to see how strong I was to fight it off. But yes, I lost a lot of material things, but I'm healthy. That's the key. Because there are people that see me today and what have you that remember me, and the Georges, they remember me being strung out. And it's hard for them to believe, you know, let alone alive. But yeah, and I feel good about it. And I'm grateful for the experience because I survived it. I feel bad for those that didn't. But there's nothing you can do. You're still an individual. And your best friend, your greatest enemy, is in the mirror. And if that person lied to you, you got a problem.
Well, it's a cautionary tale, you know. It's a cautionary tale when you can see somebody that been through it and survived it.
Yes.
It gives you hope. but so that's the duality is one you have where you are telling people your story, and those people who may have been thinking about doing it or haven't gotten to that point where they've been in a compromising position to make that choice. So now that's a caution. It serves as a cautionary tale for them, but also for those who may be going through it right now.
Yeah.
Like that information that you just gave is very helpful because look at you, like you didn't just survive. Like you're sitting here across from me right now, talking to me, and with all of your faculties intact, with all of your motor skills intact, your memory is that of an elephant. You look good. You smell good. I mean, man, you're an inspiration, man, and I want to personally thank you for always being kind to me and my group, the Ghetto Boys. Always, opening your store to us and letting us pretty much do what we wanted to do. As long as it was in good taste. You were like, whatever y'all want to do. And George's music room was one of the reasons why we couldn't wait to touch down in Chicago. It was one of the many reasons, but one of the main reasons.
Yeah, I'm so honored.
And I want to thank you for that, man, because you did not just. I was telling Nick yesterday that you didn't just sell the music. Like it was because of what you did, what you brought to the table with your store. It really helped a whole lot of people. A lot of people are eating good. A lot of people broke generational wealth curses because of you. You did that, and for that, I'm forever grateful, man. And like if there's a Mount Rushmore, for independent record stores. Man, George's music room is up there, and your face is etched in stone, brother.
And I'm so honored, and I have to give credit to the people that worked for me. I mean, like I was saying earlier, I was like Mr. Miyagi, but unless you're able to create a team, see, there's only so much you can do individually, and I had some of the best young people that I was able to train. They all grown and doing their own thing nowadays, but these were teenagers that came to work at George's. Many I gave them. This was their first job, and this was in the '90s. Most of them in the '90s, they didn't see me go through my addiction, and so I had a responsibility. To prove that I could come back. And see, I was still part of the industry. The industry saw me go through this because I couldn't see myself. You getting high like that, you don't know how obvious it is. To you in your own world. And the industry saw it happen to me. Not really nobody came through a rope for me or nothing. I had to fight my way back, but I got back. And to be able to I've been able to employ all those young people and teach them and what have you. And they all grown and gone on to do great things for themselves. But when you all came to the store, things were sharp. Everything was in order. And everybody had their jobs to do. And we were extremely professional, as any chain store would be.
Yeah.
And so I'm very proud of the legacy that George's Music Room has left.
When it's time for you to go and you ain't got no more, how do you want to be remembered?
That dude with the record store.
You got that covered.
Oh, yeah.
That's automatic. Ladies and gentlemen, George Daniels.
Thank you, man.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
No more talk.
No, sir.